The rain hammered against the cafe window like 1,000 tiny fists, each drop a reminder of Emily's mounting anxiety. She stared at the menu, her fingers trembling slightly as she calculated the prices for the third time. $23. She had exactly $19.47 in her checking account. Her heart sank as she realized she'd made a terrible mistake agreeing to this blind date at Rosewood Café, one of downtown Seattle's trendiest spots. But her sister had been so insistent, so hopeful, and Emily hadn't wanted to disappoint her again. Now, sitting across from a stranger who was running 20 minutes late, she felt the familiar weight of her circumstances pressing down on her chest like a physical force. The cafe buzzed with the comfortable chatter of people who didn't have to check their bank balance before ordering coffee. Emily had worn her only professional dress, the navy one with the small stain near the hem that she always positioned carefully when she sat down. She'd walked 40 minutes to get here because the bus fare would have left her with even less. Her shoes, despite the careful polish she'd applied that morning, couldn't hide the worn heels or the crack along the left sole that let in water on rainy days like this. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Emily looked up to find a man in his late 30s standing beside her table. He wore a simple gray sweater and jeans, his dark hair slightly damp from the rain. There was something disarming about his smile, something that made the knot in her stomach loosen just a fraction. "I think you might be my blind date," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Marcus. I'm so sorry I'm late. There was an accident on Fifth Avenue and traffic was impossible." "Emily," she managed, shaking his hand. His grip was warm and confident, and she noticed he didn't seem bothered by her obviously nervous demeanor. Marcus sat down, waving off the server who approached immediately. "Give us a few minutes," he said kindly, then turned his full attention to Emily. "So, your sister Claire and my assistant Rachel seem to think we're a perfect match. Should we prove them right or wrong?" Despite herself, Emily laughed. There was something refreshingly straightforward about him, none of the pretense she'd expected from someone Claire had described as very successful. They talked, and Emily found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't anticipated. Marcus didn't dominate the conversation or brag about his accomplishments. Instead, he asked about her work as a teacher's aide, genuinely interested in the stories about her second graders. He listened when she talked about her passion for children's literacy and her dream of one day opening a reading program for underprivileged kids. "That sounds amazing," Marcus said, his eyes lighting up. "The world needs more people who care about that kind of thing." Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest, but it was quickly replaced by cold dread when the server returned. "Are you folks ready to order?" Marcus glanced at the menu casually. "I'll have the salmon with roasted vegetables and a coffee." "Emily." She looked down at the menu, her mind racing. The cheapest entree was still $18. If she ordered water and nothing else, she could make it work, but then she'd have nothing left until her paycheck on Friday. That was 4 days away. 4 days of walking everywhere, of skipping meals, of hoping nothing unexpected happened. "I'll just have water, please," she said quietly, feeling her cheeks burn. "I'm not very hungry." Marcus's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. He studied her face for a moment, and Emily had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see right through her carefully constructed excuse. But instead of pressing, he turned to the server with an easy smile. "Actually, could you give us one more minute?" "Thanks." When the server left, Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Emily, I'm going to be honest with you because I think you deserve that. I can tell something's bothering you, and if it's about the price of the food, please don't worry about it. This is my treat." "No, I couldn't," Emily started, her face now burning with humiliation. "Please," Marcus interrupted gently. "I asked you here, and I'd really like you to order something you'd actually enjoy. No judgment, no strings attached. Just two people having dinner and getting to know each other." Tears pricked at Emily's eyes, and she blinked them back furiously. She wasn't used to this kind of straightforward kindness, especially not from someone she'd just met. "I appreciate that, but I don't want you to think. I don't think anything except that you seem like an amazing person who's working incredibly hard," Marcus said. "And I'd really like to continue this conversation over a meal. So please, order whatever you want. It's on me." Something in his tone, in the genuine warmth of his expression, made Emily's defenses crumble. She nodded, managing a small smile, and when the server returned, She ordered the pasta primavera she'd been eyeing since she sat down. As they ate, the conversation flowed even more naturally. Marcus shared stories about his childhood in a small town in Oregon, how he'd worked his way through college waiting tables and doing construction work. He didn't mention that he now ran a tech company worth hundreds of millions, didn't drop hints about his wealth or status. Emily only found out when she noticed his phone screen light up with a message addressed to Marcus Chen, CEO. Her eyes widened. "You're Marcus Chen, from Tech Bridge Solutions." He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Guilty. Does that change things?" Emily sat back, processing this information. TechBridge was one of Seattle's biggest success stories, a company that had revolutionized educational technology. She'd actually used some of their free programs in her classroom. "You created the Read Together app." "Mateen did," Marcus corrected. "I just had the idea. They made it real. That app has helped so many of my students," Emily said, her voice thick with emotion. "Kids who struggled with reading are now excited about it. You have no idea what a difference it makes." Now it was Marcus's turn to look moved. "That means more to me than you know. That's why we do it." As the evening wore on, Emily learned that Marcus regularly donated to schools, that he'd grown up poor himself, that his mother had cleaned houses to put him through community college. He understood struggle not as an abstract concept but as a lived experience. And yet there was no bitterness in him, no sense of superiority now that he'd made it. Instead, there was a deep well of empathy and a genuine desire to lift others up. When the check came, Marcus didn't make a show of paying. He simply handled it quietly while Emily excused herself to the restroom. But when she returned, she found him talking to the manager, and she caught the tail end of their conversation. "Appreciate you keeping this between us. Just add it to my account, and she doesn't need to know." "Of course, Mr. Chen," the manager said. "That's very kind of you." Emily's curiosity got the better of her. "What was that about?" Marcus looked slightly caught but smiled. "Nothing major. Just making sure they have my updated contact information." It wasn't until 3 days later that Emily discovered what he'd actually done. The cafe manager had called her, explaining that Mr. Chen had opened a tab in her name, good for 30 meals, because he'd mentioned she lived nearby and might enjoy having a comfortable place to work and eat. The manager added that Mr. Chen had been very specific. Emily was never to be told about this until she tried to pay, and then it should be presented as a neighborhood teacher appreciation program the cafe was running. Emily stood in her tiny apartment, phone in hand, tears streaming down her face. She'd been so focused on hiding her poverty, so ashamed of her circumstances, that she'd forgotten what it felt like when someone saw her struggle and responded not with pity but with dignity and respect. She texted Marcus, "I know what you did. Thank you doesn't seem like enough." His response came quickly, "Coffee tomorrow. My treat. Actually, everything's always my treat. No arguments." Emily smiled through her tears and typed back, "Only if I can contribute what I can. Even if it's just good conversation." "Deal," Marcus replied. "That's the most valuable thing anyway." 6 months later, Emily would stand beside Marcus at the grand opening of the Rosewood Reading Initiative, a program they'd built together combining her expertise and his resources. But that night, sitting in her apartment with a full stomach and a fuller heart, Emily understood something profound. True wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts but in the courage to be vulnerable and the grace to respond with kindness. Marcus had given her more than a meal that rainy evening. He'd given her back her dignity and shown her that struggling didn't mean she was less deserving of respect, care, or love. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money at all. It's the simple acknowledgement of their worth, exactly as they are.